There are civilizations that change the course of history. Ancient Egypt astonished the world with its pyramids. Mesopotamia gave rise to some of humanity's earliest cities. Greece laid the foundations of Western philosophy, while Rome built one of the greatest empires the world had ever seen. But there was another civilization, one that is difficult to define by a single monument or a single ruler. It did not leave behind only massive stone structures or stories of military conquest. Instead, it left behind ideas. Ideas that have survived for thousands of years. Ideas that continue to influence billions of people even today. It was a civilization that asked questions many of us still ask. Who are we? What is the purpose of life? What is consciousness? How does the universe work? These questions were explored in India long before many parts of the world had written records of their own history. Yet for a long time, much of this story remained outside the global spotlight. Today, that is beginning to change. New archaeological discoveries are rewriting what we know about India's past. Ancient philosophies are being studied in universities across the world. Yoga and meditation have become global practices. Historians are re-examining old assumptions, while millions of people are becoming curious about one of humanity's oldest continuous civilizations. So what exactly was ancient India? Why is it suddenly attracting so much attention? And what makes it different from every other great civilization in history? To answer those questions, we must travel back, not hundreds but thousands of years, to a time before famous kingdoms, before the great empires, and even before the stories of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata took their written form. Our journey begins nearly 9,000 years ago. Long before India became known for its kingdoms, temples, and philosophers, small farming communities began appearing across the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent. One of the earliest known settlements was Mayagar, located in present-day Balochistan. Around 7,000 BCE, the people living there were already cultivating wheat and barley, domesticating animals, crafting pottery, and building permanent homes. These may sound like simple achievements today, but at the time they represented one of the greatest revolutions in human history. Human beings were no longer simply surviving. They were beginning to build civilizations. Over the centuries, these early communities grew larger. Villages became towns, trade expanded, skills became specialized. Craftsmen produced tools, ornaments, and ceramics, while farmers generated food surpluses that allowed populations to increase. Slowly, almost unnoticed, the foundations of something extraordinary were being laid. Then, around 3,300 BCE, a remarkable civilization began to emerge along the fertile floodplains of the Indus River and its tributaries. Today, we know it as the Indus Valley Civilization, or the Harappan Civilization, named after the first major city discovered by archaeologists. At its height, this civilization stretched across an area of nearly 1 million square kilometers, larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. More than 2,000 archaeological sites have been identified across present-day India, Pakistan, and parts of Afghanistan. This was not a small regional culture. It was one of the largest urban civilizations of the ancient world. Its major cities included Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, Dhalavira, Rakhigarhi, Ganariwala, and the remarkable port city of Lothal. Each of these cities tells us something extraordinary about the people who built them. Unlike many ancient civilizations, these cities were not constructed randomly. They were carefully planned. Their streets followed precise grid patterns, intersecting at nearly right angles. Residential neighborhoods were organized systematically. Buildings were constructed using standardized baked bricks of almost identical proportions, even across cities separated by hundreds of kilometers. Such consistency suggests not only remarkable engineering, but also shared standards and organized administration. Perhaps even more impressive was their attention to sanitation. Almost every house had access to water. Many contained private bathing areas connected to underground drainage systems. Covered sewers carried wastewater away from homes, while inspection chambers allowed maintenance of the city's drainage network. Think about that for a moment. More than 4,000 years ago, people living in these cities had urban sanitation systems that would not become common in many parts of the world until thousands of years later. The city of Dhalavira, located in present-day Gujarat, demonstrated another remarkable achievement. Water was precious in its semi-arid environment, so its engineers constructed massive reservoirs, channels, and sophisticated rainwater harvesting systems capable of storing enormous quantities of water. Even today, engineers study these designs as examples of sustainable water management. Meanwhile, the city of Lothal revealed something equally fascinating. Archaeologists uncovered what many scholars identify as one of the world's earliest known dockyards. Located near ancient waterways connected to the Arabian Sea, Lothal served as an important center for maritime trade. Its merchants traded beads, precious stones, metals, shells, and finely crafted goods with distant regions, including Mesopotamia. Clay tablets discovered in Mesopotamia even mention trade with a distant land called Meluha, which many historians believe refers to the Indus civilization. Imagine ships leaving the western coast of the Indian subcontinent over 4,000 years ago, carrying goods across the Arabian Sea to foreign civilizations. Ancient India was never isolated. It was already part of an international network of commerce, technology, and cultural exchange. But perhaps the most surprising thing about the Indus civilization is not what archaeologists found. It is what they did not find. Unlike Egypt, there are no gigantic pyramids built to glorify kings. Unlike Mesopotamia, there are no massive royal palaces dominating the cities. Unlike many other ancient civilizations, there are no obvious monuments celebrating powerful rulers or military victories. Instead, archaeologists found something different: well-planned neighborhoods, workshops, markets, homes, public infrastructure. This has led many researchers to suggest that the Harappan cities may have been governed differently from the highly centralized monarchies seen elsewhere in the ancient world. Exactly how they were governed remains uncertain, but the archaeological evidence points toward a society that placed remarkable emphasis on planning, organization, and civic life. Yet despite everything we have learned about these people, one enormous question remains unanswered. Who were they? Because hidden inside the ruins of these magnificent cities lies one of the greatest mysteries in all of archaeology, a mystery that has remained unsolved for more than a century, and it begins with a handful of tiny symbols carved onto stone seals. For more than 100 years, archaeologists have been trying to solve one of history's greatest puzzles, the Indus script. Thousands of seals, pottery fragments, copper tablets, and other artifacts have been discovered across Harappan sites. On them are short sequences of symbols, animals, geometric signs, and characters unlike any writing system still in use today. At first glance, they seem simple, but appearances can be deceiving. Despite decades of research by linguists, archaeologists, historians, and computer scientists, no one has been able to decipher them with universal acceptance. Why? One reason is that the inscriptions are extremely short. Most contain only 4 to 6 symbols, with very few extending beyond 20. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs, we have no equivalent of the Rosetta Stone, a bilingual inscription that provides a key to translation. Without that key, these symbols remain silent. Imagine discovering the diary of an entire civilization but being unable to read a single page. Every seal raises new questions. Were they recording names, trade transactions, religious symbols, official seals used by merchants, or something entirely different? For now, we simply do not know. This undeciphered script is one of the reasons the Indus civilization continues to fascinate researchers. Every new excavation brings hope that the next artifact might finally unlock a language that has remained silent for over 4,000 years. But the mysteries did not end with their writing. Around 1900 BCE, something changed. The great cities that had flourished for centuries began to decline. Large public buildings were no longer maintained. Trade with distant regions slowed. Some settlements were abandoned. Others became much smaller. For many years, people believed this decline must have been caused by a sudden invasion. This idea became popular during the early 20th century. However, modern archaeology paints a far more complex picture. Today, most researchers believe the collapse was likely the result of several interconnected factors rather than a single catastrophic event. One important factor appears to have been climate change. Studies of ancient lake sediments, river deposits, and climate records suggest that monsoon patterns gradually weakened over time. Rivers that had once supported thriving agricultural communities became less reliable. Among these rivers was one that would later become deeply significant in Indian tradition, the Saraswati. Ancient Vedic texts describe the Saraswati as a mighty river flowing between the Yamuna and the Sutlej. Over the centuries, the river gradually disappeared from the landscape, leaving behind dry channels that can still be traced using satellite imagery and geological surveys. Exactly how this ancient river system relates to the Saraswati described in the Vedas remains an active area of research and debate. What is clear is that changing rivers would have had enormous consequences for cities that depended upon them. Without reliable water, agriculture becomes difficult. Without agriculture, trade declines. Without trade, cities shrink. Rather than disappearing overnight, Many historians believe the Indus civilization gradually transformed as people migrated eastward toward regions where water remained abundant. This is an important distinction. The civilization itself declined. Its people did not simply vanish. Their descendants almost certainly continued living across the subcontinent, contributing to the cultures that followed. History is rarely a story of sudden endings. More often, it is a story of gradual change, and from that change emerged one of the most influential periods in Indian history, the Vedic Age. If the Indus civilization gave ancient India remarkable cities, the Vedic period gave it something equally enduring: ideas. The word Veda comes from the Sanskrit root vid, meaning to know. The Vedas are therefore often translated as knowledge. Composed over many centuries and preserved through an extraordinary oral tradition, they are among the oldest surviving literary works in the world. Long before they were written down, generations of scholars memorized these texts with astonishing precision. Students learned not only the words, but also the exact pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation. Different methods of recitation were developed to ensure that even the smallest mistake could be detected. This oral tradition became so sophisticated that many scholars consider it one of humanity's greatest achievements in preserving knowledge before the invention of printing. The Vedas consist of 4 principal collections. The Rig Veda, containing hymns dedicated to various deities and natural forces. The Sama Veda, which adapted many of these hymns into melodies for ritual chanting. The Yajur Veda, focused on ceremonial practices and sacrificial rituals. And the Atharva Veda, containing prayers, philosophical reflections, and observations about daily life. But reducing the Vedas to religious texts alone would be misleading. They also preserve early insights into language, astronomy, ethics, music, poetry, and humanity's relationship with nature. One verse from the Rig Veda captures a remarkable spirit of intellectual openness.
Ano bhadrah kratvo yantu vishvate.
Let noble thoughts come to us from every side. For a civilization more than 3,000 years old, this is an extraordinary statement. It encourages learning rather than isolation, curiosity rather than certainty, dialogue rather than fear of new ideas. Another famous verse declares,
Ekan sad vipra bahudha vadanti.
Truth is one, the wise describe it in many ways. Whether interpreted philosophically or spiritually, this verse reflects an approach that recognized multiple perspectives while searching for a deeper unity. These ideas would influence Indian philosophy for thousands of years. As Vedic thought evolved, new texts known as the Upanishads began asking questions that still challenge philosophers today. What is the true nature of reality? Who are we beyond our physical bodies? Is there a deeper connection between the individual and the universe? Unlike many ancient traditions that focused primarily on explaining the external world, the Upanishads turned inward. They explored consciousness itself. This intellectual journey produced concepts that would later influence Hindu philosophy, Buddhism, Jainism, and even modern discussions on meditation and mindfulness. It is no coincidence that scientists, psychologists, and philosophers continue to study these texts today. Ancient India was not only building cities, it was also building systems of thought. And perhaps that is what makes it different from many other civilizations. Its greatest legacy was not merely architectural, it was intellectual. Ideas became its monuments. Questions became its inheritance, and those questions would soon inspire some of the greatest literary works ever composed, stories that have shaped cultures across Asia for thousands of years. The Ramayana, the Mahabharata. But before we enter those legendary worlds, ancient India itself was changing. Small kingdoms were growing into powerful states, trade networks expanded, new cities emerged, political alliances shifted. The stage was being set for the rise of great empires that would unite much of the Indian subcontinent for the first time. And with them would come rulers whose decisions would change not only India's history, but the history of Asia itself. The stage was being set for the rise of great empires that would unite much of the Indian subcontinent for the first time. And with them would come rulers whose decisions would change not only India's history, but the history of Asia itself. By the 6th century BCE, the Indian subcontinent had entered a new age. Across northern India, 16 powerful kingdoms and republics known as the Mahajanapadas competed for influence. Cities expanded, trade flourished, iron tools became more common, and new political systems began to emerge. Some of these states were ruled by kings, while others functioned as republics, where councils of elders or elected leaders took part in governance. This diversity of political systems reveals that ancient India was not a single kingdom, but a mosaic of cultures and ideas. It was also a period of extraordinary intellectual activity. Teachers, philosophers, and spiritual leaders traveled from city to city, debating questions about ethics, society, and the meaning of life. Among them were two figures whose influence would spread far beyond India. Gautama Buddha, whose teachings on compassion, mindfulness, and the path to overcoming suffering would give rise to Buddhism. And Mahavira, the 24th Tirthankara of Jainism, who emphasized nonviolence, self-discipline, and respect for all living beings. The emergence of these traditions demonstrates something remarkable about ancient India. It was a civilization where ideas could compete peacefully. Different schools of philosophy debated one another, challenged existing beliefs, and contributed to a rich intellectual landscape. This openness to discussion became one of India's defining characteristics. Amid this dynamic world, one kingdom gradually rose above the others: Magadha. Located in the fertile Gangetic plains, Magadha possessed rich agricultural lands, abundant iron resources, and strategic trade routes. It was from here that one of India's greatest empires would emerge. Around 321 BCE, a young leader named Chandragupta Maurya founded the Mauryan Empire. With the guidance of his brilliant advisor Chanakya, also known as Kautilya, Chandragupta defeated rival kingdoms and established the first empire to unite much of the Indian subcontinent. Chanakya was more than a political strategist. His work, the Arthashastra, discussed governance, economics, diplomacy, taxation, espionage, and statecraft in remarkable detail. Although scholars continue to debate exactly when different parts of the text were compiled, it remains one of the most influential works on political thought from the ancient world. Under Chandragupta and his successors, roads connected distant regions, trade expanded, administration became more organized. The empire stretched from present-day Afghanistan in the northwest to large parts of the Indian peninsula. For the first time, vast regions of the subcontinent were linked under a single political authority. But it was Chandragupta's grandson who would become one of history's most fascinating rulers: Ashoka. Today he is remembered as Ashoka the Great, but his story did not begin with peace. Like many rulers of the ancient world, Ashoka expanded his empire through military campaigns. His most famous conquest was the Kalinga War, fought around 261 BCE. Historical inscriptions describe the terrible cost of the conflict. According to Ashoka's own rock edicts, over 100,000 people were killed, many more were injured, and countless families were displaced. Whether these numbers are symbolic or literal, the message is clear. The war left a profound impression on the emperor. Unlike many ancient rulers who celebrated conquest, Ashoka publicly expressed regret. In one of the most extraordinary moments in political history, a victorious emperor declared that the suffering caused by war had changed him forever. Instead of pursuing further conquest, Ashoka embraced the principles of Dhamma, a concept centered on ethical conduct, compassion, justice, and respect for others. He supported the spread of Buddhism while also encouraging respect for different religious traditions. His famous edicts, carved into rocks and towering stone pillars across the empire, instructed officials to govern fairly, care for their subjects, protect animals, and promote harmony among communities. These inscriptions remain one of the earliest examples of a ruler communicating directly with ordinary people through written public messages. More than 2,000 years later, many of Ashoka's pillars still stand. One of them bears the lion capital of Sarnath, which today serves as the national emblem of India. The Ashoka chakra, originally carved onto one of his pillars, now appears at the center of the Indian national flag. Few ancient rulers continue to influence the symbols of a modern nation so directly. After the decline of the Mauryan Empire, many regional kingdoms rose and fell over the following centuries. Yet India's tradition of learning continued to grow. Then, around the 4th century CE, another remarkable dynasty emerged: the Gupta Empire. Often called the Golden Age of ancient India, the Gupta period witnessed extraordinary achievements in science, mathematics, literature, astronomy, medicine, architecture, and art. This was not a golden age because it was free from conflict. Rather, it was a period in which scholarship, creativity, and innovation flourished. Among its greatest scholars was Aryabhata. Born in 476 CE, Aryabhata transformed the study of mathematics and astronomy. In his work, the Aryabhatiya, he proposed that the apparent movement of stars across the sky was caused by the Earth's own rotation. He developed sophisticated mathematical methods for calculating planetary positions and contributed significantly to trigonometry. His work would influence scholars across Asia and, centuries later, become part of the broader scientific tradition that spread into the Islamic world and Europe. Ancient India also made enduring contributions to mathematics through the development and refinement of the decimal place value system and the widespread use of zero as a number. These ideas fundamentally changed mathematics. Without them, modern arithmetic, engineering, computers, and physics would be almost unimaginable. It is difficult to overstate their importance. Medicine also advanced during this period. Texts associated with physicians such as Charaka and Sushruta described diseases, surgical techniques, anatomy, medicinal plants, and methods of diagnosis. The Sushruta Samhita, in particular, contains detailed descriptions of surgical procedures and instruments, earning Sushruta recognition as one of the pioneers of surgery. Ancient Indian metallurgy also reached impressive heights. The famous iron pillar of Delhi, created during the Gupta period, has resisted significant corrosion for over 1,600 years. Even today, scientists study its composition to understand the advanced metallurgical techniques used by its makers. Knowledge was not confined to royal courts. It flourished in centers of learning. Among the most celebrated was Nalanda University. Founded in the 5th century CE, Nalanda attracted thousands of students and teachers from across Asia. Scholars traveled from China, Korea, Tibet, Southeast Asia, and other regions to study subjects including philosophy, medicine, astronomy, mathematics, grammar, and logic. Imagine undertaking a journey of several months across mountains, deserts, and forests simply to attend a university. That was the reputation ancient India had earned. Knowledge itself became one of its greatest exports. When we compare ancient India with other great civilizations, something remarkable becomes clear. Egypt is remembered for its pyramids, Rome for its engineering and military power, Greece for philosophy and democracy, China for its inventions and imperial administration. Ancient India contributed in all of these areas. But its most distinctive achievement was the remarkable continuity of its civilization. Dynasties changed. Empires rose and fell. Cities were abandoned. Languages evolved. Yet many traditions, philosophical ideas, festivals, literary works, and cultural practices survived across thousands of years. Very few civilizations display this level of continuity. Ancient India was never simply defined by a single empire. It was held together by something deeper. A shared civilizational heritage that adapted to change while preserving its core traditions. And perhaps that is why, even after thousands of years, people around the world continue to study it. Because ancient India did not merely leave behind ruins, it left behind living ideas. Ideas that continue to shape philosophy, mathematics, medicine, spirituality, literature, and culture across the world. But if ancient India has always been so significant, why has interest in it grown so dramatically in recent years? The answer lies not only in the past, but also in the discoveries and the questions of the present. But if ancient India has always been so significant, why has interest in it grown so dramatically in recent years? The answer lies not only in the past, but also in the discoveries and the questions of the present. For much of the 19th and early 20th centuries, our understanding of ancient India was surprisingly limited. Many people believed that India's early history began mainly with the Vedic period and the rise of great kingdoms. Then, in the 1920s, archaeologists uncovered the ruins of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. The discovery shocked the world. It revealed that India was home to one of the earliest great urban civilizations on Earth. Since then, the story has continued to grow. Every decade seems to uncover another missing chapter. Archaeologists have identified thousands of Harappan sites spread across the Indian subcontinent. Excavations at Rakhigarhi, one of the largest known Harappan cities, continue to provide new insights into the people who lived there. At Dhalavira, researchers revealed one of the most sophisticated ancient water management systems ever discovered. In southern India, excavations at Kilati have uncovered evidence of an advanced urban settlement that is reshaping discussions about the development of early societies in the Tamil region. At Sinoli, archaeologists discovered burials containing beautifully crafted coffins, weapons, and horse-drawn carts dating back thousands of years, opening new debates about Bronze Age cultures in northern India. Meanwhile, marine archaeologists continue to investigate submerged structures off the coast near Dwarka. Although these underwater remains should not automatically be identified with the legendary city described in later traditions, they remind us that much of history still lies hidden beneath the sea. Every excavation adds another piece to a puzzle that is far from complete, and perhaps that is what makes ancient India so fascinating. Unlike many civilizations that feel fully documented, ancient India still contains unanswered questions. There are cities waiting to be excavated, scripts waiting to be deciphered, artifacts waiting to be discovered. Entire chapters of history may still be buried beneath fields, deserts, forests, and oceans. At the same time, ancient India's ideas have quietly spread across the world. Today, millions of people practice yoga. Many begin their mornings with meditation. Universities across Europe, North America, and Asia teach courses on Indian philosophy, Sanskrit, Buddhism, and Hindu thought. The Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, and the teachings of the Buddha are translated into dozens of languages. Modern neuroscience has shown growing interest in studying meditation and its effects on the brain. Medical researchers continue to investigate traditional knowledge preserved in Ayurveda while carefully testing its ideas using modern scientific methods. Even in mathematics, the legacy of ancient India surrounds us every day. The decimal number system and the widespread use of zero became fundamental building blocks of modern science, engineering, finance, and computing. Every time we use a smartphone, write a computer program, calculate a bank balance, or launch a spacecraft, we rely on mathematical concepts that were shaped by contributions from many civilizations, including ancient India. Its influence is often invisible, but it is everywhere. There is another reason the world is paying attention. India itself is changing. Today, India is one of the world's fastest-growing major economies. Its achievements in science, technology, medicine, and space exploration have drawn international attention. As global curiosity about modern India grows, people naturally begin asking another question. What kind of civilization produced this nation? To answer that question, they look backward. They discover philosophers who debated consciousness thousands of years ago, astronomers who observed the movements of planets, mathematicians who transformed the language of numbers, doctors who carefully documented surgical techniques, teachers who welcomed students from distant kingdoms, poets who composed epics that continue to be read after more than 2,000 years. And slowly, they begin to realize that ancient India was never a forgotten corner of history. It was one of its great centers. Perhaps the greatest misconception about ancient India is that it was a single empire. It was not. It was a civilization. Empires came and went. The Mauryas rose and fell. The Guptas flourished and declined. Countless regional kingdoms appeared across different centuries, yet the civilization continued. Its languages evolved, its traditions adapted, its ideas expanded. Its stories were retold by each generation. Few civilizations have demonstrated this level of continuity. When we think of ancient Egypt, we often imagine pyramids. When we think of Rome, we picture emperors and legions. When we think of ancient India, no single monument can tell its entire story, because its greatest legacy is not contained within one building. It lives in ideas, in literature, in philosophy, in mathematics, in music, in language, in festivals, in spiritual traditions, and perhaps most importantly, in questions. Questions that every generation continues to ask. Who are we? Why are we here? How should we live? What is the nature of reality? Those questions have never grown old. Even after centuries of archaeological research, ancient India still refuses to reveal all of its secrets. We still cannot read the script of the Indus civilization. We continue to debate how some of its cities were governed. Researchers still investigate the changing courses of ancient rivers. Archaeologists continue to excavate new settlements every year. Every answer seems to produce two new questions, and perhaps that is exactly why people cannot stop looking back. History is not only about finding answers. Sometimes, it is about discovering better questions. As we come to the end of this journey, it becomes clear that ancient India is not becoming popular simply because of nostalgia. It is becoming popular because evidence continues to emerge. Because archaeology continues to surprise us. Because its ideas continue to inspire us. And because many of its greatest mysteries remain unsolved. It was a civilization that built remarkable cities, connected distant cultures through trade, produced philosophers, mathematicians, physicians, poets, and astronomers whose influence crossed continents, preserved knowledge across generations, and left behind questions that humanity is still exploring. Perhaps that is the true meaning of ancient India, not simply a chapter in history, but an ongoing conversation between the past and the present. A reminder that civilizations are remembered not only for the monuments they build, but for the ideas they leave behind. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of humanity's oldest and most remarkable civilizations. If you enjoyed this documentary, we'd love to hear from you. What surprised you the most about ancient India? Was it the advanced cities of the Indus Valley, the wisdom of the Vedas, the transformation of Ashoka, or the scientific achievements of the Gupta Age? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to read them and discuss them with you. If this is your first time here and you enjoy exploring ancient civilizations, forgotten kingdoms, historical mysteries, and timeless legends, consider subscribing to the Tales of Lost Glory. There are countless stories buried beneath the sands of time, waiting to be rediscovered. This is only the beginning of our journey. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and never let the stories of our past be forgotten. Thank you for watching.